Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for August 7th. So we're through the first week of August and it has been a little topsy-turvy. Lots of sort of basic insanity coming out of the White House. I mean, on the one hand, Trump and the administration are suing Nevada, I think it is. Because they want to, do this mail-in voting. And so he's suing them, but he's telling Florida that they absolutely need to vote by mail-in. So he's trying to straddle literally a really rickety fence. So this is kind of the nonsense that's going on right now. And just kind of, you're going to need to get used to it. Sorry. But remember, desperate times, desperate measures. And that's what he is going with. He is so desperate. He is starting to actually realize he is failing badly. And you have to understand with Donald Trump, one of the kind of crazy things about him is it's really important that he has to keep the narrative going in his head about just how special and spectacular and wonderful he is. And so when that narrative in his head is sort of getting a little wobbly, and then he exposes himself and he actually gets pushback on some of the stuff he's saying, it becomes that much harder for him to not only maintain the illusion and the story in his head, but to then project it. So, not surprisingly, he had that interview with Jonathan Swan, where he really came off looking incompetent, not rational, ill-informed, and in some ways, almost it became very clear that the things that his aides are telling him and reality are not the same thing. So they're bending things and manipulating things in such a way so that, it looks one way on those pretty little colored graphs that they like to give him. But if you calculate things in a way that puts you at an advantage, and then you only show a portion of the graph, right? So then it looks like you're doing really good, except that it was calculated strange and they cut off the graph so that instead of them looking like they were, the numbers or the stats were right at the bottom, they cut off all of the other information that really clearly showed the line he was looking at as right at the top. So it's hey, it is what it is, and he is what he is. So I'm going to quickly take a look at sort of two of the more kind of pressing areas that are going on right now. One of them is the post office and the schools, and the schools are becoming that date is coming closer and closer, and people are starting to really try to wrestle with the reality of that and how that's going to look and how that's going to work. And there's no way that any of these schools really should be opening up at this point because the virus is not under control enough. And you have those people who make those decisions ultimately, really starting to push back and say, yeah, nope, not going to happen. And again, there are some that are the exception to the rule. And if you happen to live in, a red state, the pushback is harder, right? The pushback is not as successful. That's what I'm trying to say. So in order to mount a really good pushback against like the DeSantis's of the world, it has to be a really strong pushback, because otherwise, frankly, he just pushes you back, he pushes the other way, and you end up with this, two opposing forces, and there's not a lot of flex or give there. So and let's look, we're going to start with the post office, okay? Because so what's going on is that Trump has put in a bunch of people in there who don't know what the heck they're doing, are not qualified, but they definitely are going to try to fulfill his agenda. And, you know, he's had a hard on for the post office since forever. I mean, that goes back to the whole Amazon thing. But right now, he's really, really concerned because he's scared that if everybody actually gets to vote, he's going to lose really badly. What, again, because he doesn't think beyond the moment, what he neglected to realize is if you're being, if you keep saying, this is going to be a disaster, it's going to be a hoax, it's going to be a fraud, we won't know the results for like 100 years, well, your people are listening to that, buddy. And now they're starting to get really panicky because his people are now saying they don't want to vote in person. And so they really are depending on mail-in voting to make that work for them. So now he's trying to figure out a way to sort of gracefully backtrack. So let's take a look at the post office and what is going on with the post office, and frankly, how successful or unsuccessful they may be in actually seriously trying to impact, you know, the results coming in. Yeah, come on down. Okay, so U.S. Postal Service election, U.S. Postal Service election, U.S. Postal Service election. Okay. Okay. So kind of what you see here, hang on, I'm just going to push you guys back a little bit. Part of what you're seeing here right now, okay, so there's these people working behind the scenes. They're kind of in cahoots with each other. They're all trying to figure out, you know, how to keep pushing things and swinging things and frankly breaking things so that Trump has whatever advantage he can find, because honestly, he doesn't kind of have very many anymore, if any. So a lot is going on kind of behind the scenes, and that's how come you get these crazy people who don't know what they're doing, put in these really powerful positions, but their entire purpose and agenda is to do whatever Trump wants done. So there right now there's definitely a backlog and things have definitely slowed down, and there is definitely sort of talk behind the scenes and trying to figure out how to make this work at the point in which Donald Trump figures out that, oh God, the people who are actually wanting to vote for me, I may not get those votes. Never mind, we won't know the results. He's actually scared that they're not going to vote for him if they're not allowed to vote by mail. And so I actually see a reversal, right? A change of view, a change of attitude, a different perspective coming down the pike, because at the point that he figures out that this really could be quite detrimental to him, and he is already in such a defensive posture, and he is pushing back every single place that he can push back. So the Postal Service right now is under a great deal of pressure, but I'm not convinced that that pressure is sustainable or long lasting. It feels as if by the time we get through kind of the next 90 days, he's going to really start singing a very, very different tune. So sure, there's going to be dirty tricks and there's going to be, you know, sleights of hand and there's going to be all of this stuff. But the thing to remember is if the results show a significant discrepancy all of that is going to, sort of fall under review. So I heard somebody, I think on MSNBC the other day, saying something to the effect of, I think it was like 3%. There can be 3% of fraudulent voting, even though it's way, way, way less than that. But 3% can kind of slide by, was sort of what he was saying, can almost get away with it. But beyond that, it's really noticeable and it's really obvious, and it just simply gets caught. And so in some ways, he needs more than 3% to sort of make this work in his favor. As of right now, when 66% of the country, or a solid 1/3, don't like him, don't like what he's doing, don't anything. He's incompetent. They don't trust him. His approval ratings are in the tank. So as for the post office, I got to tell you, it kind of looks like, despite the fact that right now, the Trump administration is really trying to, and by extension, of course, his flunky in there, they really are trying to bind the post office. They really are trying to block the post office. It doesn't look like they're actually going to be able to get away with it. I mean, you have temperance and strength both showing up to sort of say, you know what, these tricks and games, they're really not ultimately going to be effective. Now, does that mean that everybody can just sit back and say, oh, well, he's screwing with the mail? No, it means that pressure always, public pressure always, forces them to pull back. So, somewhere in September, as the coronavirus in the Midwestern area of the United States, when that thing really, they're just starting to feel that uptick now. So in 3-4 weeks, when it's really bad and everybody is saying there's just no way we can vote unless we can mail things in, there's going to be, it really looks to me anyways at this point, like there's honestly going to be a little bit of a change in strategy, because what they thought was going to be their strength ultimately ends up really harming them, or potentially harming them. And so I'm seeing sort of an indicator here that they really are going to figure out that the strategy they're using with the post office is really going to backfire for them, and they're not going to get the turnout, and they're not going to get the response they want. And that really looks and feels as if that is going to cause them to pull back from where they are and sort of actually start to ramp up the Postal Service to get this stuff through. And here, of course, is the Eight of Wands telling us about things moving quickly and change happening quickly. And wands, of course, are about communications, etc. So this is a really nice indicator that communications, which of course is what mail is, there's going to be a sudden shift in what is going on right now. So kind of looks like the post office is going through a bump, but it definitely, I mean, this is the thing, right? If states start taking, Trump to court, for example, over this ridiculous slowdown, and suing one state because they're Democratic, and then encouraging another state because they're apparently Republican. And I don't know. I got to tell you, I'm not all that convinced that that the good people of Florida are so anxious to elect him or re-elect him. But let the delusional have their delusions. So that's kind of how I'm reading the post office thing. It's aggravating right now. It is frustrating right now. But I see there coming a shift where simply there's going to be enough pushback on the one hand, and frankly, they're going to start getting information that really is going to look bad for Trump. And so I'm seeing that sort of get reversed. Let's take a look at schools. Some of them are already opening. There's pictures now of kids, crowds of kids not wearing face masks in the hallways of schools. So that's not encouraging or helpful. Doesn't feel like that's a really good example of social distancing, or physical distancing, which is really what it is. You've got, people showing up on campuses or in schools, and all kinds of them are testing positive. So let's take a deeper look at schools and see kind of what's going on there. Here we go. Fall, return to school, fall, return to school, fall, return to school. Okay, so as this unfolds, and there's a really sort of compressed period of time here, but more and more, little by little, you are hearing more places saying, yeah, we're going to roll back the opening. It's going to be, more virtual. We're going to do a lot of online stuff, etc. As that becomes sort of literally a more common refrain, and you're actually going to start hearing people in authority saying, we can't do it. Now, is this going to be uniform across the country? No, because nothing is uniform across the country, especially now with how divided everything is and how divisive the politics have become. But you're going to see sort of rules coming down and being he's going to get, again, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be some states that try to go along with him, but school boards, for the most part, are actually going to choose more often to lose the funding, which is like 5% or something. It's not even a lot of funding. And I get that schools need absolutely every dime that they can get. I totally get that. But they're going to be choosing to lose the funding as opposed to risking the lives and the health of all of the staff, all of the children, all of the families of the children. So ultimately, it's just not going to work out so well. There are going to be some, make no mistake, who are really going to hang on to the bitter end before kind of having to break with what Trump wants. I don't see that his narrative is actually going to change because he doesn't understand that. All he understands is in order for the economy to rebound, kids have to be in school. That part of the equation he got. What he didn't get was that if you continue to behave in ways that are going to infect people and amplify the issue and the concern and the problem, that's going to really negatively impact the economy's growth. So he only heard one part of the message, which frankly is why there's this really strong push, right? He just wants what he wants. And there are some people who are going to hang in there, but ultimately it really does look like some schools that are going to open are likely going to have to turn around and close very, very quickly. And that is when you're really going to see strong pushback from the very people who voted for these guys, for the senators, for the governors. Sorry, it's the governors that sort of are controlling that. So it's very frightening, and I'm not saying everybody's going to kind of get through unscathed. But what I am suggesting is that when the kids start returning and the numbers really increase and things start looking really bad, I think that that's where you're going to see more and more just pushback, and it's not going to happen. And, let's not count out the teachers' unions like that, because it's not like the teachers, as an example, don't have some stuff at least that they can do to. I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was literally saying, you know what, if the teachers want to go on strike and not return to school, but go on strike instead, that they had the support. I think it was of the teachers union. So you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not without some power. They're not without their own kind of tricks up their sleeve. There's things that they can do. And as the numbers continue to spiral, and as more and more cases come out, you're going to see, I think, where the schools are going to just sort of pull back and say, we really can't do this as aggressively as we want to, or as we're being told to. So again, right? The United States has 4 point something percent of the population, and just over a quarter of the deaths of the global world are happening in the United States. So this isn't going to magically going to go away. And there are going to be really stuff that is going to have to be reckoned with. And like I said, people are going to pull away, and ultimately, again, you're going to see this change. Part of what's going on right now is, and it can't be understated enough or overstated enough, people, government officials, okay, are getting so desperate. And you're going to see this real uptick in kind of like crazy behavior and stuff going on. But understand that there's going to be more pushback coming down the pike, I think, than a lot of politicians actually think they're going to experience. In some ways, Trump has really taught the Republicans that the best way to handle, opposition is to bully, it's to yell, it's to scream, it's to make demands. And for whatever crazy reason that seems to have worked for Trump, we have seen that it does not work for people who try to emulate him. Okay? So let's just, interesting. Look at that. As I was cutting the deck, you've got the King of Pentacles, which of course is my trump card, with the Four of Swords, which is interesting because, like, does that literally not say Trump and pulling back or retreating? So that's interesting. All right. I want to take a look at Trump and see how he's doing, because it strikes me that he is really being humiliated at every turn, and he can't bounce back. Okay, so this is the thing, right? That's Jonathan Swan interview as an example. It really, really pointed out a lot of the frailties, the flaws with not only Trump the person, honestly, but with the way he understands things and ultimately expresses himself. Okay, so it was just a terrible, terrible 35-minute interview for him. What does he do? He hops on, Fox and Friends. The next day or the day after that, a couple days later, it was, I think Wednesday morning that went on, because he's trying to sort of, gain back ground. Well, there's only so much ground that you can gain back. Again, when 60% of the population or 66% of the population has already made a decision about how good and effective you are. So going on Fox and Friends really does not salvage the problem, if you will. So let's take a look at what's going on with Trump, what kind of advice he's getting or not getting, and let's just see if we can get some clarity as we're going into the weekend, where hopefully everybody will at least be able to take a small deep breath and regroup, recharge, etc. So let's take a look. Trump current state, Trump current state, Trump current state. Okay. So one of the things that is really, I want to say sort of starting to become more glaringly apparent, I guess I'll say it that way, is that the strategies that the Republicans are using, or frankly failing to use because they don't have a coherent message, are really in contrast to what is going on the Democratic side of the ledger, is just by the Biden campaign behaving and reacting the way they are, without almost saying a word, they are, in a very powerful way, showing the American people literally the choice they need to make. And Trump is very aware of that. And so it's creating this sort of bizarre reality. It feels like, I've often said that when I step into Trump's energy, it is like being in a psychedelic kaleidoscope. Everything's just constantly in movement. Everything is always shifting around, and there's nothing clear cut. There's no clear edges. It's just all this constant movement. So on the one hand, he spends his time in this kind of fantasy world where he works very, very hard to maintain his illusion. And the stress of that is really starting to take a toll on him. So that's part of where he spends his time. The rest of the time, he is spent sulking and pouting and picking fights and yelling and screaming. And this is the thing that we have learned about Trump. Trump doesn't actually know how to do anything. Like, he doesn't. So his idea of handling a situation is to delegate. And he really feels that once he has said, so-and-so, you take care of that, he really feels like he has done his job. His work is complete, and he can now step aside. And so then he spends time pouting because, people don't believe him and people don't like him, and, the numbers aren't good for him, et cetera, et cetera. So he's, I want to say at this point, kind of really struggling. There is this sense where, and again, the Joe Biden vice president, okay? Those two cards are flanking him, which is indicating that he is getting a lot of pressure as they start moving towards him. Biden, apparently they have released or are about to release a really big ad sell, I guess, I'm not sure what that's called, where there's going to be a lot of commercials, et cetera, getting pushed out into sort of public consciousness, because they really haven't done a lot of that. Well, I guess they're starting. And so that feeling of that pressure coming in and squeezing him is really, really going to start taking hold. It's going to be harder and harder for him to stay, at least even for 50% of the time, in this like illusionary world he likes to live in, where everything is wonderful and he's happy and etc. So as that unfolds, you're going to see more behavior that just makes you question what the heck is going on. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't anything. And what you need to remember and keep very clear in your mind, that a lot of what is going on right now, and that includes in like those hearings like that, what was that? The Judiciary Committee hearing the other day with Sally Yates, and I couldn't watch a lot of it honestly because um, what was coming out of their mouths was so stupid it didn't even make any sense, and she just kept fact correcting them and fact correcting them. But what you need to understand is they only wanted the soundbite where they were being derogatory and insulting and making everyone look like they're in cahoots with some deep state conspiracy. Um, and so you're going to be getting a little bit more and more of that, where there's just that sense of understand that this is really about sound clips for their base. This is about sound clips for Fox News. And only the talking, heads news, right? Because even Fox is sort of getting into the place where their news people actually are reporting something that kind of resembles facts. Where once you get into the Hannity and the that group, then it's just words, salads, mixing up, making everything muddy. So he is going to continue to try to push back, and it's not going to work for him. And in some cases, this is the thing, right? He has taken the rejection very, very personally. And so there really is a part of him that has just kind of given up. He's more about trying to figure out how to exit with a story that'll hold than kind of fighting for this reelection. He's really not doing that. Again, he has delegated everything, and I'm done. Well, you're the one that's running for reelection. Those people are supposed to be helping you. You're supposed to be driving the train. Well, no. In fact, he's sitting in the caboose, waving to the people who really aren't there at the back of the train. Okay. It feels honestly really, really disjointed right now. His pettiness, his arrogance, his ignorance, his cruelty are really, really starting to surge to the forefront. And it's 90 days, okay? And while people's memories are short, when they don't have money coming in, when they themselves or the people they know and love are sick and or dying, trust me, memories get a little bit elongated, okay? So it feels right now he's kind of in like a bit of a fight. He wants to win, but you know, he's not sure that he's really gonna, and he can't find the balance, and the campaign can't find the balance, and he can't find the balance because it's all about appeasing whatever Trump needs to hear in the moment. And what he needs to hear is not working for him. In fact, it really is indicating his lack of strength, his lack of focus. And he's actually starting to get that message kind of loud and clear. Ultimately, it very much looks like he's going to be dealing with hurt feelings, a broken heart. And I'm not talking ultimately, I'm talking about kind of in the short term here. It really feels like there's going to be disappointment after disappointment. It really feels like there's going to be bad news after bad news. It really feels like more and more court decisions are not going to go in his favor. And it's going to start spiraling and snowballing very quickly. And as that happens, hang in there, because that is where it really kind of starts getting like a little bit crazy. And I actually think, based on this Ace of Pentacles, I actually think that when it comes right down to it, his fundraising is really, really not going as well as he likes people to think it is, or frankly, even as his aides are telling him it is. So there we have it. Okay, so I guess, frankly, some good news about the post office and about schools, and a little bit of rocky news in terms of how Trump himself is doing, and what we can anticipate from him sort of in the coming days. But again, don't let it rattle you. A lot of what's going on is simply about sound bites, just like the kind of Gestapo police marching into Portland was about getting the film clips. You're going to just see more of that kind of insane and ridiculous behavior. So thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate all of the support. Your donations are just humbling. So I thank you very much for that. Information for readings in the little description box below on how to reach out to me to get that information. And I'm now booking very early September. So have a good weekend. Decompress a little bit and stay safe. I'll see you soon. Until then, take care and be well. Bye-bye.